In 2024, a peer-reviewed paper in Annual Review of Entomology described a behavior so mechanically inevitable, so perfectly self-destructive, that researchers struggled to find language for it. They weren't describing a disease. They weren't describing a predator. They were describing an ant following instructions. In the jungles of South America, on a patch of forest floor no bigger than this room, something has been happening for millions of years that science still cannot explain. No blood, no predator, no poison. Just a circle. A perfect silent circle of ants. Hundreds of thousands of them, marching in lockstep, one behind the other, round and round and round. They will not stop. Not to eat, not to rest, not for anything. They march until they drop dead. This is the ant death spiral, one of the most documented and least understood phenomena in all of animal behavior, not because it's violent, not because it's rare, but because of why it happens. These ants don't die from predation, not starvation, not disease. They die from obedience. They die because they are following the rules perfectly. In 1921, naturalist William Beebe, whose field observations are still cited today, measured one of the largest ant mills ever recorded, 370 meters in circumference, more than 3 football fields. Each ant took 2.5 hours to complete one lap. He stood there and watched. The ants didn't stop. They kept circling even as the ones ahead collapsed. They walked over the bodies and kept going. Here's what makes this stranger than it looks. These are not sick ants, not confused ants. Army ants of the Eciton genus are, by almost every biological measure, one of the most successful organisms on Earth. Their colony structure has been essentially unchanged for 105 million years before the continents fully separated. They survived the extinction that killed the dinosaurs. They've outlasted everything. And yet, under the right conditions, a small group locks into a circle and marches itself to death. No external force required. That is the question scientists have been trying to answer for over a century. How does a creature that has survived 105 million years of planetary upheaval get trapped by a loop it created itself? And why can't it find the way out? As soon as the ant death spiral became widely studied, researchers from Stanford and the Smithsonian Tropical Research Institute wanted to know what was actually happening inside that loop. Myrmecologist William Gottwald, one of the foremost authorities on army ant behavior, led the field investigations. His team tracked colony movements, mapped pheromone trail patterns, documented the exact moment subgroups lose contact with the main column. After extensive observation, they didn't find a clean answer. They found 3 obvious explanations and watched each one fail. The ants weren't diseased. They weren't starving before the spiral formed, and the terrain wasn't forcing them into the circle. Something else entirely was happening. Here's what researchers believe is happening. Army ants are functionally blind. They navigate entirely through pheromone trails, chemical signals laid down by the ant directly ahead. When a subgroup breaks from the main colony, the lead ants have no external reference point, so they follow the only trail available, the one they just created. Every ant behind them does the same. The loop closes. And here's where it becomes a trap. Every revolution deposits more pheromone onto the same circular path. The signal grows stronger with each pass. Breaking out doesn't get harder gradually. It gets harder with every single step. The spiral doesn't trap them from outside. It traps them from within. As of now, no certain escape mechanism has been identified. Now scale this up. Whales. For decades, marine biologists thought mass strandings had a simple answer. One sick, injured, or disoriented animal leads the rest into shallow water. Tragic, but explainable. Then the data changed everything. Researchers studying long-finned pilot whales began documenting something their models couldn't account for. Healthy animals, physically robust, no disease, no acoustic trauma, deliberately following disoriented pod members onto lethal coastlines. That alone is disturbing. But here's what made scientists stop cold. When humans intervened, refloated them, and returned them to open water, many of these animals immediately turned around and beached themselves again. So why does it happen? 3 theories, none of them stick. The first, coastal geography. Certain bays have a gradual, sloping seabed that may bend echolocation signals, making shallow water appear open and safe. But not every similar coastline produces strandings. That inconsistency has never been resolved. The second, geomagnetic disruption. Solar storms temporarily distort Earth's magnetic field. Some researchers believe cetaceans use that field as an internal compass, but proving a direct causal link between specific solar events and specific stranding dates, it hasn't been done. The third is the most unsettling. Social cohesion, so extreme it becomes fatal. The bond holding the pod together may be stronger than the instinct to survive. Researchers are deploying acoustic monitoring networks to test this. But as of now, no certain answers. Picture this. 2 in the morning, a beach in New Zealand, the water is cold, the sand is dark. And stretched across the shoreline, for hundreds of meters, are hundreds of pilot whales. Some are still alive, their bodies rising and falling with shallow breath, and they are making sounds, low, rhythmic pulses moving through the wet sand beneath your feet. That is what marine biologist Ingrid Visser experienced during one of the largest mass stranding events ever recorded in the southern hemisphere. What struck her wasn't the chaos. It was the silence between the calls. The living animals weren't trying to escape. They were calling back. Scientists still don't know what they were saying. Now forget whales. Look at wolves. Researchers tracking a pack of 9 gray wolves in Wyoming expected standard hunting patterns: pursuit, takedown, consumption. What they documented violated every established model of predatory efficiency. In a single night, those 9 wolves killed 19 elk and consumed almost nothing. 19 carcasses abandoned in the snow. This wasn't an anomaly. The same pattern keeps appearing across unrelated predator species. Biologist Hans Kruk recorded 19 spotted hyenas killing 82 Thompson's gazelles in one event, consuming barely 16% of available meat. A single red fox killed 74 penguins in one night. Ate almost none. Scientists named it surplus killing. They've been studying it for decades. Nobody fully understands why. In 2016, marine biologists off the Pacific coast documented something no evolutionary model could cleanly explain. Between 1951 and 2012, researchers recorded 115 separate incidents of humpback whales intervening in active killer whale hunts. Here's what made it extraordinary. In 89% of those incidents, the orcas weren't attacking humpbacks. They were attacking seals, sea lions, sunfish, gray whale calves, completely unrelated species. The humpbacks had nothing genetic to gain. They intervened anyway. And it went further than that. Researchers observed humpbacks carefully lifting terrified Weddell seals onto their bellies out of the water and holding them there until the orcas left. Not their species, not their kin, not their problem. They did it anyway. That behavior has not been fully explained. Scientists studying animal grief expected to document basic mourning behaviors in elephants: standing vigils, touching remains, vocalizing near the dead. What they recorded went much further. Cognitive scientist Corinne McComb at the University of Sussex led a careful field study in Amboseli National Park, Kenya. Her team tested elephant responses to bones from multiple species. What they found: elephants showed a specific selective interest in the bones of other elephants, and only elephants. They investigated elephant skulls longer, more carefully, more repeatedly than any other remains tested. By standard behavioral models, that level of species-specific recognition of death should not exist in non-human animals. McComb described the results as deeply unexpected. Researchers are now building longer studies to understand what elephants actually know about mortality. Read that sentence again. What elephants actually know about mortality. None of these behaviors have been fully explained. Not one. And here's what makes that remarkable. It's not simply that we lack answers. It's that every time we look closer, the animals appear stranger, and somehow more familiar. If you have a theory about any of these, leave it below. The best comments from this video will be in the next one. That video is already out. Link is below.